Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Kingsford High School, Kingsford Middle School. I'm Dave Lindbeck, Kingsford High School principal, and I'll be serving as your Master of Ceremonies today for today's Veterans Day celebration. At this time, please stand and remain standing for the presentation of colors by Kingsford American Legion Post, Sons of American Legion, Carpenter Clash, Post 363. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. To lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, President and Vice President Hunter Gisa and Madeline Kreider of the Kingsford High School Student Council.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Mrs. Jessica Garvalia, Kingsford Middle School principal, who will officially welcome us to the 2024 Veterans Day celebration.
Good morning, students, staff, community members, and veterans. I am Jessica Garvalia, the middle school principal, and many of you may know me from my previous position as a Kingsford High School history teacher. For this reason, I am grateful to be the opening speaker to honor and remember the significance of our veterans and the history of this day. Today, in honor of Veterans Day, we gather to pay tribute to the brave men and women who have served our country with their lives. Today, we not only express our heartfelt gratitude to our veterans, but also take a moment to reflect on the origins of this significant day. From the Revolutionary War to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, our veterans have answered the call to serve and have demonstrated their unwavering commitment to our country. They have shown us the true meaning of courage, sacrifice, and selflessness. Veterans Day, originally known as Armistice Day, finds its roots in the aftermath of World War I. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the guns fell silent, marking the end of what was once thought to be the war to end all wars. Armistice Day was established to commemorate this moment of peace and to honor the brave soldiers who fought and sacrificed during that global conflict. In 1954, the name was officially changed to Veterans Day, broadening its scope to honor all American veterans, recognizing their service in both times of war and peace. This transition aimed to encompass the contributions of veterans from all eras, highlighting the enduring dedication of those who have answered the call to defend our nation and its principles. We recognize that the freedoms and liberties that we enjoy today are a direct result of the sacrifices that are made by our veterans. We owe them a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid. But we can honor their service and sacrifice by living our lives in a way that reflects the values that they fought for. On this Veterans Day, let us remember the words of President John F. Kennedy, who said, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." Let us honor our veterans by living our lives in a way that upholds the values of freedom, justice, and equality. Let us work to create a better world, one that is worthy of the sacrifices that are made by our veterans. Thank you for joining us in this meaningful tribute to our veterans. May this day be a reminder of the debt of gratitude we owe those who have served, and may we create a world where their sacrifices are met with respect and appreciation that they truly deserve. Welcome to our 2024 Veterans Day program.
Thank you, Mrs. Garvalia. Now a musical selection by Kingsford High School's very own concert chorale under the direction of Mr. Kurt Rogan in the singing of Salute to the Armed Forces, arranged by Camp Kirkland. The choir invites all veterans, current service members, to stand if able to be recognized during their branches of the respected song.
The United States Army. The United States Navy. The United States Coast Guard.
the United States Air Force,
the United States Marines,
Thank you, Mr. Rogan. It was very good. Today's speaker. It is my privilege to introduce our guest speaker today, an extraordinary member of our community whose dedication and service have had a profound impact both near and far. He's a 2000 graduate of Kingsford High School, grew up right here among us. With a strong sense of duty, he enlisted in the Army National Guard alongside his best friend. His service began overseas as he was stationed as a military police officer in Germany. After returning home, he pursued a higher education at Northern Michigan University, but his studies were interrupted when he was called to serve in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Demonstrating further commitment to helping those in need, he also took part in relief efforts for Hurricane Katrina. When his service with the National Guard concluded, he continued to heed the call to public service by attending the police academy at MATC, Milwaukee Area Technical College. His career in law enforcement started as an officer at Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin, and he continued in Outagamie County, where he served as a sergeant. Ultimately, he returned to his roots with his family to serve and protect his hometown, taking on the role of a Kingsford public safety officer. Please join me in welcoming a true embodiment of service and dedication, Officer John Svengros.
Good morning. I'm John Svengros. I'm an officer here at Kingsford Public Safety at this time. So, I'll see a lot of students every day in the hallways as I come in and walk the halls, and always feel free to say hi to me and talk about anything you need to. Thank you, Principal Limbeck, Principal Jarvalia, for doing a lot of work in setting this up today. I really appreciate that, and so do all the other veterans here. Not only did I grow up in this community, I grew up through this school system. I started at Woodland in 1989. I was there on the first day and came up through Kingsford Middle School and Kingsford High School. It was in Kingsford Middle School where I met my best friend Kenny Caston in sixth grade. He and I eventually lived together in college, and we joined the service together. And we did try one semester of college at NMU. Before basic training, we had time to go through one semester of college, and I was not ready at that time or mature enough to even attempt at it. I think my first semester, my GPA was a 0.07. There might be like an achievement and award for that, because that's pretty impossible. But after that first semester, Kenny and I went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I should back up a little bit and talk about the ASVAB test, which I believe everybody here will take at some point. That test is looked at by military recruiters and the military in general. When you go into the military, it kind of designates you, puts you, tells you what kind of job that you're fit for in the military. And I had two choices. One was military police and the other was combat medic. And I already had an interest in becoming a police officer, so it was kind of a no-brainer. So Ken Caston and I signed up to be military police, and we went to basic training right after our first semester of NMU after graduating high school here. Basic training, a couple of things that I remember today about it that kind of taught me life lessons. One, it was the first time, especially for a couple of Yoopers, you got to try and work with, meet, hang out with, and become friends with people from all over the country, right? So we had Hispanics, blacks, Mexicans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, males, females, all together, and everybody's from their little corner of the country, and all of a sudden everybody has to work together. And it's a hard, forced transformation from being a kid to a soldier, but it is forced, and we signed up for it. And what's amazing is by the end of it, you truly feel like it's one of the only times in my life where I feel like everybody was the same. Everybody had the same job. Everybody was equal. Everybody was doing the same thing, had the same mission, had the same goals. So that's what I really appreciated about basic training. The next thing was military police school, and that's when you graduate, after you learn how to become a basic soldier, you go to the military school, the trade school for what you're going to be, which is military police school. It's also at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Military police, during peacetime or just when they're not at war in a combat zone, take on the role of law enforcement officers for soldiers. So around the country and around the world, you have military bases, installations that are the size of cities. And they have schools as big as this one. They have restaurants, libraries, grocery stores. The PXs are the size of a Walmart at some of them. They're a community all by itself. So they need police officers as well, and that's what military police do. It's nothing different from what you see our police in our communities driving around. It's what military police do when they're not at war. During combat, the role of military police changes pretty significantly. I'll talk about some of the jobs I was trained in to do. One of them was customs. The customs is the checking of items coming in to our country to ensure that they are legal. The other thing is convoy security. So you escort military police in combat, normally operate in a Humvee. You guys know what a Hummer is, a Humvee. And that's a 3-person team, and it's a truck with a very large machine gun on top of it. And when soldiers need to transport equipment or themselves across country, across the combat zone, military police escort them and provide security for our own troops so that they don't get attacked, or to keep them safe from going from point A to point B in a combat zone. And the other thing is the camps that we set up in a combat zone in theater in Iraq and Kuwait also need police and need security. So military police also fill that role during wartime as well. When Kenny Caston and I got home from basic training in military police school, it wasn't a week we were home. I attempted to go back to school again, but that was cut short. We were deployed to Germany, which was one of the best times of my life. It was one of the most fun things I've ever done. So we were deployed to Germany, and as I said before, there are military installations that are the size of cities that need police officers to patrol them. And so we flew to Germany, and we stepped into the role of police officers on various military bases across Germany. It was a lot of fun. After being in Germany for almost a year and coming home, again, with the intent to go back to school, because we did sign up for the National Guard with the intent of, one of the intents of that at the time is having school paid for by the military. So we try to go back to college in between every one of these jumps out of country, but we come back from Germany, and again, we have, I should say, while we were in Germany, September 11th, 2001 occurred. So the world changed while we were in Germany, and we didn't immediately get sent to war, but when we got home from Germany, we had to almost right away, pack up, cut short another semester at NMU and deploy overseas again for Operation Iraqi Freedom. Going to a desert environment, we flew into Kuwait, and Kuwait it's like being on another planet. If you've ever seen pictures of Mars on TV, it's just flat. It's as far as you can see, it's flat desert. The climate change for people that don't live in a desert environment and aren't used to it is so drastic that you spend your first 2 weeks in that desert environment getting used to the heat. So they don't have you really do anything except for sit in the heat and be hot and get used to it. When we got there, we were living in tents, and there was no air conditioning in those tents. And I remember sweating the first several nights and sleeping on a military cot with nothing but underwear. And in the morning, below your cot was a big white stain from all the sweat that you sweat through that cot, and it evaporates, and the salt from your sweat is left on the floor underneath everybody's cot. And you do that for a while, and eventually you become used to living like that. We were trained as customs MPs right away. As I said, customs check personnel and equipment so that nothing illegal makes it back into the United States that's not supposed to be here. And we did that for soldiers. So we had a couple of missions. What we would do is so that soldiers could fly home with all their equipment and not spend a bunch of time going through customs when they got here, getting all their equipment checked for illegal items or anything that they're not supposed to have when they come back. We would do that for soldiers so that they could fly home right from the desert and go home and be with their families. So small detachments of my unit would fly up into certain camps all over Iraq and set up a customs operation where we would check soldiers' equipment, bags, vehicles, and everything like that, put a customs stamp on it. They could fly home and go immediately to be with their families and not have to go through customs. Convoy security and base security were the two other things I talked about, were two other roles, two other missions that we did over there. Base security, guarding the military camps in a Humvee, driving around the desert, around around the camp. Like I said, it's a very unique environment. You can see everything in every direction, and then all of a sudden you see a camel, just a camel. And a camel they're gigantic animals. And I would always wonder, what do they eat? What do they drink? It seems like their top of their head is 10 feet tall. But it was just one of the odd things that my gosh, that's a camel in the desert. And you'll see that I have pictures with them, took a bunch of them. Convoy security. So the Iraqi soldiers, Iraqis that we were fighting against at the time, figured out that attacking military convoys, that soldiers transporting equipment and themselves from one place to another was one of the most effective ways to cease military operations altogether. So if you cut off equipment and you cut off personnel going from one place to another, nothing else operates in a combat zone. So when those attacks on convoys became more frequent, the need for security on a convoy became greater. So our company, our military police company that was initially here from Michigan, we got overseas. We were supposed to be home in 6 months. After 6 months, we had all of our stuff packed, ready to go home. They said, nope, we need you for another 6 months. 6 months came and went, and all of our stuff is packed, ready to come home. We need you for another 6 months. And you can imagine that that wears on people after a time who are away from their friends, family, and everything back home in a stressful environment. It's during our last 6 months that our most dangerous mission, escort, that's convoy security, that became our primary mission. That's all we did. So every week we would get a mission, and we would meet up. The military police, as I explained before, were in Humvees. I'm going to go through some of these. So you can see we have military police here. This is what we would wear. It's called protective equipment we would wear. That's some of the equipment. This is my team right here. Step back over here. You'll see me in the middle. It's one of the few times in my life I had a mustache. On my right side was my gunner, the tall guy next to me. He would sit up in the turret and operate those 2 machine guns on top of the roof. And my driver there on my left was Amber Kyer. That's Craig Frank and Amber Kyer. That's my military police team. And a squad consists of 3 or 4 Humvees. So the 3 of us would jump into that vehicle, and we would meet up with semi-trucks. There are soldiers whose job it is just to drive semi-trucks across the battle zone. And we would take a group of us, 6 Humvees, and meet up with military truck drivers, and we would drive in front of their convoy and behind it and everywhere in between to protect them as they drove across the battle zone from one point to another. We would do that every week. Ultimately, ended up driving about 10,000 miles in the combat zone through the desert, escorting military semi-trucks. Talk about the people I was with here, and I'll go through and just go through some pictures later, but these are people that, and I'm their sergeant, by the way, so these 2 are I'm their supervisor, but you live with them, you're like their parent. They ask you for permission to do things, they follow your orders, and you work as a pretty tight-knit team. I remember about a month before we came home, Craig Frank came up to me. We were in Baghdad, Iraq, and we were going to bed for the night, and we were on the big military base in Baghdad, and Craig Frank came up to me to ask if he could mail something out to his girlfriend and make a phone call. Back then you had to go to sit in a booth to make a phone call home. And I said, of course you can. And he had a teddy bear with him that he had just purchased from the PX. That's the post exchange. That's where soldiers buy things. And he wanted to mail that home to his girlfriend. It takes about 2 weeks sometimes for things to get home. Less than a week after that, that's the last time I remember talking to Frank, we were on a convoy security mission coming back into Baghdad, Iraq, and Craig Frank was killed in a roadside bomb, killed in action. That was on July 17, 2004. Convoys become targets, and the enemy figured out that the best way to take them out would be to just hide somewhere and try to blow up as much of a convoy as they could. So Sergeant Frank was killed in action during a roadside bomb on July 17th, 2004. Amber received injuries to her eyes, but she is okay now. She's fine. She's married with children. And that was about, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks before we were supposed to fly home. So made it all the way through almost 18 months, and then we ended up losing Sergeant Frank. He was promoted to sergeant after he was killed in the last 2 weeks. And I'll never forget when we got home, that teddy bear that he sent home made it home after he got killed, and his girlfriend was holding it when we got home, and I'll never forget that. And I think before we have we go on to the next thing, I'm just going to point out that my friend Kenny Caston, we made it through all that together, got home, got married, had kids. His kids are with us today. Ella and Henry are with us today. In 2001, Kenny also passed away at the VA hospital here in Iron Mountain, Michigan, from complications due to a rare form of cancer he developed. But so I just wanted to mention we have 2 veterans that I am highlighting today to think about that are no longer with us.
Thank you for your words today. At this time, I'm going to ask Kingsford High School Band, under the direction of Mr. Jacob Barnby and Mr. Mark Rose. They're going to perform Eternal Flame, composed by Brian Balmage. Please stand.
Right now, I'd like a moment of silence to remember Sergeant Kenny Caston and Sergeant Craig Frank.
At this time, we will remember and honor those who had made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. As our very own Claire Anderson and Mackenzie Landcourt will play taps. You may be seated. On behalf of Brighton Township School District, I want to offer a sincere thank you to Officer Svengross for his inspiration and his story he shared today. I also want to thank Mr. Rogan, Mr. Barnby, Mr. Rose, Mrs. Garvalia, the Carpent Clash Color Guard, Mr. Yankee, Mr. Cowan, Mr. White, and our custodial staff, and our food service staff who helped make this morning's program successful and meaningful for all of us. But last and most important, I want to thank all the veterans that are here today or in our thoughts. As we conclude today's gathering, I want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to the veterans among us. Your courage, dedication, sacrifices have shaped our nation and safeguarded the freedoms we cherish. Today and every day, we honor your service and commitment. Thank you for your unwavering dedication in protecting our country and for the countless ways you continue to enrich our communities. We are forever grateful. To all veterans, past and present, your bravery and strength inspire us all, and your legacy of service will forever be honored. As we leave here today, may we carry with us a spirit of gratitude for the sacrifices you've made on behalf of this nation. Thank you for your service, and may we continue to strive for the values who you fought to protect. I would like to give a special recognition to all of our KHS seniors who had answered the call of service and will enlist in the military after high school. Please stand and be recognized. Kingsford High School seniors who will enlist. Now I'd also like to ask all of our veterans to stand and be honored. Now the entire student body, both Kingsford High School and Kingsford Middle School, please stand and thank our veterans who are here today and have done to ensure our continued freedom and the right to live in the greatest country in the world. Veterans, thank you for all you've done for us. We are honored by your presence here this morning. This concludes the morning's Veterans Day program. A reminder to all veterans here today, there will be a social to follow in the KMS cafeteria. Students, you are dismissed.